Welcome to the London Free Press podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. There was a shock at the London Transit Commission earlier this week when 3 LTC members resigned from the board, and then city politicians quickly voted to dissolve the board entirely. Now, the city plans to take over the LTC until November 2026. Well, today I'm talking with London Free Press City Hall reporter Jack Moulton about what led to this decision. Hi, Jack. How are you?
I'm good, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
We love having you on here. Yeah, of course. So take us through what happened with these resignations. 3 people resigned from the London Transit Commission uh, at the same time. That's unusual. Why did that happen?
Yeah, unusual is a bit of an understatement. It was a big dump on Monday when the added agenda for the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee came out. That's a committee consisting of all 15 members of council. On that, here comes 3 resignations from a 7-member body. And it's my understanding, based on conversations I've had, that they've sort of occurred, in tandem over the weekend, one after the other. And but there is a commonality between all 3 of them. All 3 of them mention that there has been a tough relationship with City Hall, in various different ways and diplomatic ways of saying that, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But also, making comment about the governance of the London Transit Commission itself. For instance, in Commissioner David Little's resignation letter, he says it has become increasingly apparent that LTC is not well positioned to move forward on the significant change necessary to meet rider expectations in a growing city. This is further impacting LTC leadership, credibility, and exacerbates the ability to procure needed resources. I recommend a thorough evaluation of existing commissioner structure. Similar comments questioning the governance structure of the commission from the other commissioners. One of them is David Little, Jacqueline Madden, who is sort of the accessibility voice on the commission, or was, and one of 2 council appointees, Councillor David Ferreira, the downtown councillor.
And he resigned as well, which is unusual too. So, okay. A year ago, City Council actually ordered a governance audit of the LTC. Why was that? What brought that on?
That was basically brought on by City Council giving them a pretty decent bump in funding during the multi-year budget talks. Readers may remember there were some quibbles among councillors and a very close vote about funding to add new service, which narrowly passed in a reduced manner. Anyway, this is actually just about their baseline funding just to maintain what they have now. The mayor, in his budget, actually proposed giving them exactly what they asked for in that sort of baseline budget. But it was, it was a pretty penny. But there was tension in the sense that even though they were granted all this money, they still couldn't improve service. And, some councillors took issue with that and, wondered, hey, is there something the commission could be doing better here? Is there a better way to go about using this money? So they ordered this audit to, look at the governance. I believe, examining the routes is also in order as well. Things of that nature. But among the pieces in that audit, which I've heard is due to begin shortly, even though it was
they ordered it a year ago. Yeah,
almost exactly. Yeah, they also want to look at if transit could be run by City Hall itself. The LTC is a arm's length commission, fully city funded, but they make their own decisions. It's an independent body that makes their own decisions. With obviously some feedback from the 2 councillors who typically sit on there, but they're independent. But they're looking at something more akin to like the fire department, where it's actually city staffers directly, overseeing uh, this body. So that's on the table as well. It's not clear where the audit will end up. They'll make recommendations on if that's the right path forward or if things should stay the way they are.
So the audit hasn't started yet. It's going to start soon, but do we know how long it might take?
Yeah, so politicians were talking at the committee meeting about the bid just going out to tender now. So it's probably due to get underway, within the next couple months. But it's my understanding that the results won't be back for until, funny enough, around election time.
Okay, 2026, is that it?
That's right, like fall 2026.
Okay, so it
And
could take about a year and a half.
exactly, because this is a pretty sweeping audit, and they have to be thorough about this. But
Sure.
and it's sort of hinted at in the notion of this, and we'll get into it. The temporary body that will come in is set to dissolve on November 14th.
Okay, well, that is my next question. So earlier this week, City Council voted to take over the LTC and dissolve the LTC. So what does that mean? What does that look like?
I should be clear that right now the motion to dissolve LTC is just an endorsement from committee. It still has to be fully approved by council on Tuesday.
Okay. So it's not for sure yet.
Yes. Having said that, given this was a committee of the whole, unless two councillors changed their mind, it was a 9-6 vote. This is likely going to happen.
Okay.
And what's going to happen is at that April 1st council meeting, they're going to select 5 councillors that will step in to act as the new commission. As of now, it's not set in stone exactly who, of course, but I know councillors Ferreira and Skylar Frank and Sam Trosso have already expressed some level of interest in joining. They mentioned as much on Tuesday.
Okay.
Remains to be seen if they'll commit to that, if they've reconsidered, or if other people feel obliged to jump in.
Okay.
But yeah, should this be approved at that council meeting, the commission will be dissolved as of that day. And this will be the new commission going forward to November 14th, 2026. And then beyond that, it depends on the recommendations of the audit.
Okay. Do councillors have time to do this? And we know that they're very busy. A lot of them have jobs outside of being a councillor. Being a councillor is a part-time job. Do they have time to take on another commission, some of them, or head a whole commission themselves?
Remains to be seen. Yeah. Shocker. Being a city councillor or even the mayor requires a lot of your time. You have to serve on a bunch of standing committees at City Hall itself. The one that made this recommendation being one of them. But, you're also assigned out to different outside boards, the police board, the library board, London Middlesex Community Housing, the Transit Commission.
Yep.
So, it's not uncommon for councillors to have, anywhere from, I'm probably going to get this horribly wrong, but, 3 to 6, plus different assignments.
Sure.
And so, understandably, politicians were a little bit hesitant to commit to who would be on that board that night, which is why they pushed it off to the council meeting. Remains to be seen, though. Yeah,
what will happen
as of now, 3 people have said maybe I'd like to be a part of this, but they have to find 5 people. They were initially talking about 3. That was in the original language. And maybe this speaks to how sudden this is. Before one politician stuck up their hand and said, well, if it's a body of 3, we can't meet just one-on-one with another person because that would be an illegal closed-door meeting of the London Transit Commission. So now it's 5. And
why 5? Because there's 7 on the board right now.
You know what? That's just the number they arrived at.
Okay.
I'm not sure there's any broader reasoning behind it, behind just picking a number, and yeah, maybe
Okay.
that speaks to the availability of counselors.
And having a quorum, I guess.
Exactly, and
Okay.
I think Councillor Jerry Pribble, who is the other council appointee of this uh, possibly soon to be former commission, kind of called out his colleagues on this. Normally, Councillor Pribble is a fairly reserved guy. You know, he'll stick up his hand and ask questions of staff at different committee meetings and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
he actually got a little bit fiery about this issue and said, you know, why are we doing this if we don't really have a concrete plan going forward?
Mm-hmm. And he was not one that resigned from the board. So he's still on the LTC board right now. Okay.
As of right now.
Now, the chair of the LTC board right now has said to counselors that she doesn't recommend they take over. Now, she has obviously vested interest in remaining chair of the board, but what were some of her reasons to counsel for not dissolving the board?
Yeah, obviously it's hard not to recognize the self-interest there, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, she does have some points. You know, she's concerned about about losing sort of institutional knowledge from dismissing you know, the existing commissioners, the
Yeah, that's
majority of which
fair.
are you know, civilian appointed. Um, and she told politicians from the gallery the other night that, you know, bringing in politicians who haven't sat on this commission or haven't dealt with transit issues of any kind,
Mm.
you know, are going to have to an uphill battle. And she went further and said, you know, it would set LTC up for failure. So her point was to have institutional knowledge, you know, have some carryover from you know,
Mm-hmm.
who's on the commission now, and her alternative, which uh, you know, in conversation with her yesterday at the uh, scheduled ahead of time LTC meeting,
Okay.
was to replace the 3 vacancies with politicians. Keep the 7-member body as it stands right now. Fill those vacancies with politicians, which would
Mm.
make it so that 4 members of council sit on this commission, and they would have a majority say. That way, you keep everyone together, you
Mm-hmm.
know, keep a little bit more stability, but council can have you know, a bigger voice and more direction in things going forward, which is seemingly what they want.
And you retain the knowledge of the people who've already been there. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, there were several issues that seemed like sticking points between City Council and LTC. We'll just go over a couple of them to begin with. Bus passes for Clark Road students, high school students for some of them. That was one issue. And also applying for assessment growth funding. Can you explain what the issues were there?
Yeah, so I'll start with Clark Road. The what was proposed there was a pilot program, largely spearheaded by the Deputy Mayor Sean Lewis and Councillor Peter Cuddy, East End councillors, and some trustees with the Thames Valley District School Board. What they wanted to see was a pilot program to have, you know, a special transit pass for students in order to get to school.
Okay.
Um, you know, they landed on Clark Road because it's right next to Argyle Mall there, which is already served by a lot of transit routes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, on paper, it kind of makes sense. The issues arise when, you know, LTC suggested this is a school served by a lot of transit, but you know, these routes are very busy. So they were concerned about further overcrowding, which is already a massive issue with a lot of
The bus routes.
most of the routes
Mm-hmm.
within London right now, and you know, incentivizing more kids. I should say specifically grade 9s in this pilot project in the first year, and both grade 9s and 10s in the second year.
Okay.
Yeah, incentivizing suddenly, you know, maybe a couple hundred kids more taking transit, especially at peak times in the morning and in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
They were concerned about what would happen there. Uh, they also took issue with, you know, okay, we're going to give these kids transit passes. What do we measure as success here? At least, for a lot of the time these discussions have been ongoing, there haven't really been any established metrics about what they're planning to achieve. Is it, planning to scale back yellow bus use? Is it, to try and boost attendance? What are we tracking here?
Mm.
Um, because and the general manager of LTC, Kelly Pilechny, uh, was sort of saying like, of course, if you give people a free means to use transit, of course ridership is going to go up. So we need to nail down the specifics here.
Sure. What are we measuring?
And this has been a back and forth for, I believe, more than a year now, at least in a more concrete sense that it's being formally discussed by all three governance bodies.
Mm-hmm.
The problem came when, all three bodies drafted a memorandum of understanding, sort of, outlining the program a little more and everyone's responsibilities. It came to LTC to confirm their participation, uh, and they failed to sign on in a tie vote. Councillor Jerry Pribble was campaigning in the provincial election. So it was 6 commissioners, and it died on a tie vote. So as such, it came back to council saying, in a staff report saying, we can't really do this right now because LTC hasn't signed on.
Right. Okay.
And, that's an issue.
Okay, let's talk about assessment growth funding. City Council wanted LTC to apply for assessment growth funding, and they didn't. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
And in a letter to politicians earlier this week, the commission chair outlined why. To step back a little bit, again to that those budget talks, LTC was granted a lot of money, but again, not a lot of room for service growth.
Mm.
Um, and so, as a alternative, some politicians were suggesting that LTC apply for assessment growth, which, to explain to your average Joe, is basically just the net new money the city gets from property taxes based on new developments. Brand new houses that weren't there a year ago, or commercial buildings, things of that nature. So it's the new money revenue the city's bringing in.
Okay.
And they have a system for allowing bodies, like the police and the fire department, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
to apply for a piece of that money to basically address the impacts of said growth, because assessment growth kind of implicitly comes from population growth.
Sure. And they need more services, so they need to apply for more money to serve the new people. And yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are some rules around, what exactly you can apply for. It's an application process. It's not just handed out.
Okay.
And, politicians wanted LTC to get a piece of that because, they're saying, okay, your routes are overcrowded. That's more than likely, at least in part, brought on by, more people being in the city riding transit.
Right.
Not to mention, we have some new developments in the city that, could use some transit service.
Sure.
So what happened was, yeah, they urged LTC to do this, but LTC were saying we can't, and that's because some of the eligibility requirements, and the letter from the LTC chair highlights this. One of the criteria is that you cannot use the money to expand existing service. Even though politicians were insisting that, like, okay, what about infill development? A couple new 25-story towers crop up. That's new growth. But the criteria sets out you can't use it to expand existing service. In LTC's case, as the chair highlighted in her letter, basically LTC is only able to apply for it, if they create a new bus route. And, there's even further restrictions that, let's say, it's a 2 or 3 year old, say string of houses or a subdivision. That's not new.
Right. Okay.
There's some further restrictions around timing there.
Sure.
It can't just be, maybe a 2 or 3 year old development that doesn't have transit service. It has to be new.
Okay. And this became a sticking point between City Council and the LTC.
Yes, because they were urging LTC to apply and they didn't.
Right.
And city staff even explained to them that, yeah, LTC's having trouble trying to find the data to, back up an application.
Right. Okay. Okay.
But they were not happy to see them seemingly not even try.
I see. Okay, we'll go over the next couple of issues just quickly here. During budget time at City Hall, the LTC ran ads on their buses encouraging people to press council for more money to expand their services, even though council gave them all or most of the money, all of the money that they had asked for. But that obviously didn't go over well with councilors. Can you explain that?
I should say not quite all.
Okay, not quite all.
They gave them all the money they needed to, basically keep their books stable for the next couple of years. The mayor pushed hard for increased service hours for paratransit, which the community has been desperately seeking the past few years. And yeah, council haggled about exactly how much conventional, just everyday service kind of thing. How many more hours should be added? To my recollection, LTC wanted 25,000 additional hours per year. I think council granted something like 18,000. So there were some issues around that, but the long and short of it is, they ran during budget time ads on their buses and, posted on social media saying like, hey, are you tired of overcrowded buses or buses, driving by you full speed while you're waiting at the stop? Well, email your city councilor to, push for this service, which, irked some politicians, including the budget chair. And I think that's because no other agency really went about it like this.
Okay.
One might argue that maybe the police service did with their $100,000 PR campaign, but maybe not so much in your face like press city council. They were more like, hey, this is a really good idea to expand the police service. They're not saying email your counselor kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
So they didn't like the approach there.
Sure. Another issue is that there's been longstanding delays in introducing both smart card service and an online booking system for paratransit. And that those have just been ongoing for a few years now, right?
That's right. And Jacqueline Madden, that accessibility advocate and commissioner who resigned, did touch on that in her remarks to politicians the other night, how smart card service, as I understand, is now factored into paratransit now.
Okay.
The online booking system, I think, is just starting to get off the ground. But smart card service, I think, was, as she mentioned, introduced 8 years after it came in on normal buses. And yeah, the booking system has been long in the works, and LTC, they've alleged there's been issues with the service provider, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But we heard some of the ramifications about it at budget time, where people were waiting on the phone, like if you had to book a paratransit trip in advance, you had to call, and there were issues around that. So that's been a point of contention for years now, and it's just starting to get some results.
How rare is it to dissolve a commission like this?
I would say, well, it took a lot of people by surprise, and maybe I should say by how sudden it was.
Sure, yeah.
There wasn't really, even to those who might have been paying attention, indication that this was coming. But I wouldn't say it's totally unprecedented. It happened twice in the last term of council, where politicians voted to dissolve the governing boards of both the London Housing Development Corporation and London Middlesex Community Housing. Granted, they went about that in two very different ways. The Housing Development Corporation was absorbed into City Hall, brought in-house.
Okay.
Whereas London Middlesex Community Housing, the board was dissolved. Some governance changes were made, and then the board, more or less not brought back, but reinstated.
Okay.
Um,
With new members.
that's right.
I see. Okay, so for now, this is going to go to a vote at City Council next week and say it is dissolved. The LTC is dissolved. What happens from there?
Yeah, so at this rate, I guess it's a bit of a wait and see game. There was some reassurance that, day-to-day operations probably are not going to be really affected by this.
Okay.
The London Transit Commission as an entity it still exists. Uh, it can be easy to confuse the commission as in the governing body and the LTC as like an entity,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I know personally startled me when I was sort of reading the first news of this. But
sure, yeah. But the buses are still running. The bus drivers, the people who work for the LTC, they all still have jobs.
Exactly. So, riders may not have to expect much change in the near future, but sure. Exactly, who's on this well, first, if this move gets approved at all, and if it doesn't, what are the next steps there to address some of those issues within LTC itself?
Yeah.
But if it does end up being dissolved, yeah, who's going to be on that new commission? How experienced are they going to be? Maybe what their priorities are. We don't know at this rate.
So the next LTC meeting is April 30th.
That's right. And who will be in attendance is still a little bit up in the air at this rate. Based on conversations I've had with both the current LTC chair and some of the staffers with the authority, the staffers will still be there and that meeting is still on. But, the actual decision makers who will sit there depends entirely at what happens at this council meeting, because this motion of dissolution takes effect April 1st, the same day as this council meeting. Okay. Happy April Fools? I don't know.
Yeah, but, really? Okay. We'll see what happens next week.
Exactly. Should, councillors change their mind and not move forward with dissolving this commission, they'll have to appoint the replacements for these resignations, and those current commissioners will get to stay on. But should this go through, that April 30th meeting will be attended by whoever's appointed, by those politicians appointed.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens next week at this council meeting regarding London Transit Commission. And we'll get an update then, which means we'll be watching and reading your stories at lfpress.com. Thank you, Jack. You are a wealth of knowledge. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Rachel. High compliments.